good morning, good morning. Well, we're back with a radical conversation between a Jew of practicing persuasion and a Jew of wandering persuasion. And of course, you know, having watched our launch show yesterday morning, who I am and who Levi is. Of course, Levi is the practicing Jew and I'm the wandering Jew. And we're here to talk about that. And we're here to talk about that in a deep and satisfying way, not just for me, not just for Levi, but for every single person who joins us here in this brief 20-minute conversation every morning. Why is it going to be that satisfying, that fulfilling? Because it's going to actually reduce the difference between the two. And it's going to reduce the difference between the two because we're going to learn so much more about each. We're going to learn what it means to be a wandering Jew and what it's meant to be a wandering Jew all these decades, indeed these thousands of years. And we're going to learn what it means to be a practicing Jew, and not just now, but for thousands of years. Think about that. Levi, as a practicing Jew, has in fact generations of practicing Jews behind him. And I, as a wandering Jew, have a mixture of people behind me. Practicing Jews, I'm absolutely certain there must have been. Wandering Jews, I'm absolutely delighted to say there have been. But of course, that's what I say today. Who knows what I'll say tomorrow and the next day as we go through this process of having our conversation. So, Rabbi Levi Cunin, I'm delighted to see you this morning. What do you have to say this morning about what transpired in our conversation yesterday?
Well, first of all, Rabbi Michal, it's so good to see you again this morning. And these days, I don't take that for granted. When I think about how many people today are waking up to hearing news about loved ones and who are no longer with us anymore, and just to cherish and be grateful for the fact that we could be doing this. I'm being present to that and trying to really stay in that space, you know? I think that our first conversation really opened up my eyes, even though we know each other for some time now. When I say some time, I mean a couple of years, but one of the things that it got me more present to is how deep the background of our stories influence the people that we become. And in a certain sense, I grew up as a Chabadnik, which I'm so grateful that we had the leadership and we have the leadership of the Rebbe who guided us to really, truly, not just don't judge another person, but if you really get present to it, you realize how absurd it is to judge your fellow Yid for the level of their practice, your fellow Jew. But yesterday in our conversation, it got deeper to me to realize how deep and ingrained we become at the young age by everything that is influencing us, by the level of what our parents are doing and how they're doing it. And to a certain degree, I got even deeper in my being grateful for having been brought up as a practicing Jew and having had the gifts of a practicing Jew. And
I want to add to what you just said, because I also experienced for the very first time, and it's remarkable for me to say that for the very first time. I'm going on 84. How long does it take for something to actually strike you in the way that it did yesterday? And that is the depth of your experience as a practicing Jew, as a Jew who practices being a Jew in a way that a wandering Jew never has. It's astonishing to me, the difference. And I trust that our guests and the folks who will be joining us continuously will discover the ramifications of all that because you shared it so delightfully yesterday. I want to thank you for that. But go on, you were saying what you were saying, and I'd like to hear more of it.
You asked me a question this morning, how I'm feeling in lockdown. I responded to you, I don't feel locked down. Don't get me wrong, I am in quarantine, as all of us are. But that answer didn't come from Levi Cunin. That answer came from my Yiddishkeit. The ability to be in a space that could be considered a total lockdown, but yet to choose to see it in a different perspective is Yiddishkeit, is what it means to be a practicing Jew. In other words, it is not just in the fact that we do the rituals of the tefillin and the mezuzahs and all the beautiful mitzvahs, but it's also the way in which we are occurring, the way in which we are observing our reality, our story. And that was something that I thought that I wanted to share with you. You know, I think that I learned that from the teachings of Hasidus.
Let me interject just one second, because you introduced a conversation we had off camera.
Correct.
And that was the conversation about the lockdown, which is the conversation about the virus, which is the conversation about California is locked down because we can't leave our homes.
I got a bird in here. 1 second. I got a bird in here. I have to go out. Thank you. It's gone.
We're locked down, which means that Levi is locked down in his home with his 9 children.
Amen.
I get that, with his 9 children. And he'll explain the youngest and the oldest and more about that. But he's locked down with his 9 children, and of course his wife of all these years, who's blessed him with these 9 children. And he's talking about just that. What does it mean to be locked down? Go on, Levi.
Thank you for that. So yeah, that the fact that we have not only the ability, but the responsibility to choose the right narrative to be in the way we are. In other words, the same person, for one person, it could be the feeling locked up, and for the other, another person could choose to see it as we're now given an opportunity to be present in a different way. It's been a long time that we all spent so much time together in a duration of such a short period of time, and it's going on further. We're all learning and teaching each other new things about each other. So there's a lot going on, and there's so many different ways in which we could choose to be present. And don't get me wrong, I don't underestimate the pain and suffering that's going on right now. I'll just tell you one story that I'm reminded of. True story. A group of Habad Hasidim were in the Holocaust and ended up in a gas chamber. And they realized what was about to take place, and one of them began to start crying and saying, "Let's do teshuvah. Let's further, the last minutes. Let's do what we have to do for the last minutes of our life." And one of the Hasidim said, "Look, one of the most important components of fulfilling a mitzvah is not just the fulfillment of a mitzvah, but the fact that we're joyful when we're present and when we're doing that mitzvah." So there's an incredible joy that he says, look, the biggest mitzvah that one could do is to completely give their lives to Hashem. He says, we're being taken because we're Jews, because we're people who live as Jews, etc. And that's the only reason why they're taking our lives. Let's be happy. Let's be happy in our last moments. Let's start dancing. Crazy. Let's start dancing. So they began to dance. And the SS, this is in the gas room. And the SS soldier got so freaked out that he opened it up and he let them all go. And we know they're survivors of their children and grandchildren. So I think of that story because what gave them that kind of possibility to suddenly have that idea about being joyful, that is Yiddishkeit.
But hear me, I hear what you're saying. That's Yiddishkeit. But how does one decide to be happy? Meaning, we wandering Jews, are either sad or happy, miserable or excited. In short, we don't decide in this conversation to be happy. Happiness is derived from how I feel, not how I think. And I know, because I've been engaged in this conversation with you for some time, that literally the mind rules the feelings. And we don't live like that, we wandering Jews. We, all of us sitting out here having this conversation with a practicing Jew, is that you decided to be happy a long time ago. That is your Torah, our Torah. You see, I said your Torah as opposed to our Torah, because I don't.
Correct it yourself.
I'm not absorbed in Torah. It's never occurred to me that my mind can shape my feelings as much as it does. It's never occurred to me. So talk more about that for us, because it's a critical component of our conversation and will be a critical component of our conversation as we go through this.
Well, thank you for that question, because in fact, the very definition of Chabad is an acronym for 3 Hebrew words. Chachma, which is often translated as wisdom, but also could relate to the beginning of consciousness, like an epiphany. Bina, which often is translated as knowledge, but also really represented by that which we evaluate after we have a new awareness of something. And das is the transition of intelligence to what forms an emotion.
That was Chochmah.
Chachma, Bina, and das. Das.
Thank you.
So this is a map of a human being that when we're really in a healthy state, then we're always available to that which is coming anew from the mystery. We're learning new things. We're learning more Torah. We're evaluating if this, then what, if this, then what. By the way, these steps are now scientifically known to be the distinction between the right side and the left side of the brain. But this is something that was spoken of in the teachings of Kabbalah and Hasidism, going back thousands of years in Kabbalah, about this process. And then in a healthy situation, epiphany, evaluation, and then there is the knowing. Knowing means that now it becomes you. So yesterday you had one way in which you were present and you felt about things, but we have the ability, it's within us, to always be open to that which is outside of our current state and to influence it to the degree where we know it, meaning that we know it. And just conclude for this part before if you want to ask any question about that before, there's one other point I want to say. When the Torah, think about this, very interesting, when the Torah says that Adam and Eve were intimate and had a child and had their children, it says, and Adam knew Eve. That's the word that's used, and Adam knew Eve. So the idea of knowing, the idea of taking something from here and it coming here is such a strong way in which that could influence, that does influence to the degree where it actually manifests in that which brings about the birth of a child.
So wait a second. So you say Adam knew Eve. Correct. And you're saying that in the context of Chochmah, Bina, Das.
Yeah, primarily Das. The part that is about that which influences the emotions And the fact, of course, that when a male is in a situation where, with trying to keep this the words here clean, but when a male is aroused, that is a das moment. That's the ultimate das. It could be. We could talk about why it can't be, but it could be the ultimate das. Meaning, when Adam was present to what was going on in the unity between him and Eve, not in a way where it was the way that we would experience, but we understand the experience of it where there's other motives going on, but it was a very deep sense of union that he was present to, and the ultimate manifestation of that was the ability to connect, and that's the flow, to the degree of the flow.
So it seems to me, as you're speaking about that that's a core premise or core platform upon which the world, our world, works in relationship to the divine. In short, we are accessing, as human beings, through our mind, what's occurring both in our mind and outside of our mind, and we're taking that information and transferring it in one sense downward. Does that make sense?
Yes, and that's the healthy way. That means you're aligned in a healthy way. But then there's an unhealthy way. And an unhealthy way is when the emotions become the driver and the intelligence takes a backseat. And that's how most people respond to everything.
Now that's really, really important, because it essentially described what I said earlier on in this conversation, that my experience is an unhealthy experience. In short, I feel, I think, I feel, I think, I feel, I think. I think on the basis of how I feel, as opposed to I feel on the basis of how I think.
That's it. That's the ultimate battle that we are all on. And even people like myself who are aware of this conversation and who are aware of this limitation, etc., and aware of the healthy mind and how it is best embraced when we do it first through being connected to the highest level of intelligence. And what that means, by the way, Chachma, the first of the three stages of consciousness, require as a prerequisite to the true experience of learning something that's outside of us, is to be able to accept with humility that we don't know. And to accept with humility that we don't know what we don't know. And that itself becomes a platform for the possibility of new knowledge. That's the healthy way. That's the learning of the Torah and how it continuously waters our minds and influences us. The unhealthy way, if we don't water that, and again, I say this is for everybody, including myself, as someone that knows this conversation, if I don't have a handle on it, then that's the way I'm operating. My emotions are driving my intelligence.
So I just say, and because this is only the second time we've done this, I have to say that I'm also looking at the clock, because we have a 20-minute deadline, and I'll say deadline for the end of this conversation. So I want to summarize what just happened. What just happened, and understand everybody who's watching and listening to us, and we're going to have more and more and more and more people do that. What just happened is we just defined the essence of a practicing Jew and a wandering Jew in the way we behave in the world. So it's not absolutely clearly that. It's not that, in fact, all of us as wandering Jews act upon what we feel. It's just that that is primarily the unhealthy substance of feeling versus what happens in the mind. And I'm not going to just call it thinking, because it's something more than thinking. And this is the start of that conversation. So Levi, it's now 20 minutes, meaning we're done. Can you believe that? Please,
Wow.
let's cut this off and say goodbye.
All right, goodbye. Have a great day. Make it a great day. And because this is playing on a Friday, I want to wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom. And if you're watching this, light Shabbat candles, find out, look at FridayLight.org to find out the information. Look up what the Shabbat Wizard to get information on that. Bring some of this juice in your life. You'll be so happy for it.
Thank you, Levi. It's been a pleasure. I'll see you again. I'll see you again, but not tomorrow, the following day.
There you go. Okay.
Bye-bye.